This video is sponsored by SkinVault GG. More on them later. Asia just had its best 12-month period in the history of Counter-Strike,
It's a dream.
with 2 Asian teams having won silverware in the last year and 3 Asian teams in the top 15. The culture of Counter-Strike is also booming in Asia, with some of the most crazed fans being from the area, with a large number of Tier 1 LANs coming up in the region. So what's happened? Asia has gone from being a second-class citizen to being one of Counter-Strike's most promising regions, with exciting players and teams, crazed fans and investments pouring in. So, the question remains, how has this rise of Asian Counter-Strike happened? Asian CS hasn't always been down in the pits that we've come to expect over the past 10 years. In order to appreciate the rise, we need to understand the fall. Back in 1.6, countries like Korea were some of the most competitive countries in Counter-Strike, being a consistent sight at high-tier LANs, and they even won a major event, the World Esports Masters in 2010. Throughout 1.6, S-tier tournaments were consistently hosted in both Korea and in China, bringing in more eyes from the region to the game, making a positive feedback loop of more eyes equals more investment, equals more eyes, equals more investment, and on and on. But after the launch of CSGO, things changed for the worse. As a paid game, the PC ban culture in Korea, where a significant number of their players played, never picked it up, meaning the vast majority of Koreans were not exposed to the new release. Of course, they continued to play 1.6 and even Counter-Strike Online, the Counter-Strike made for the Asian market, but as the rest of the world moved on to play CSGO, Korea was left behind. Eventually, with almost no new players being introduced to the series, and instead opting for a Counter-Strike clone, Crossfire as the FPS of choice. With CSGO not getting an official launch in China until 2017 through Perfect World, the pipeline for new Asian prospects was pretty blocked from the start. The first 4 years of CSGO were a desert in terms of Asian teams, with literally only one single map being taken away by an Asian team from an international team before April 2016. But things started to look up for Asia in 2016, and perhaps the pathway towards their 1.6 levels was on the way. But with China sitting on top of the throne, not the Koreans. They were too busy playing RTSs and MOBAs. Tournaments with large prize pools were beginning to pop up, attracting international teams and expanding the game more within China. It was at this point when Tyloo, who had only just rejoined the scene, was able to qualify for the playoffs of DreamHack Malmo 2016, taking a map off Liquid, who at the time had Simple, and winning a best of 3 against Luminosity, the defending major champs at the time, which was unexpected to say the least. This momentum continued into 2017 and 2018, with Tyloo continuing to attend large events. Vichy, another Chinese team, also made its way to a number of international LANs. Tyloo even made history in 2018, being the first Asian team to reach the top 4 of an international LAN at IEM Sydney, after getting past the likes of SK, Cloud9 and Renegades, all dangerous teams at the time. And quickly following up this achievement, they were the runner-up at IEM Shanghai after beating Virtus.pro in the semi-final. This slew of deep runs earned Tyloo the number 12 spot globally at the time of the Faceit Major, but this is where it all stopped. Even with the official release of CSGO in China in 2017, bringing untold numbers of new players to the game, number 12 was the best spot an Asian team could muster at this point. The crew of Captain Mo, Vintet, and Somebody were the players people thought of when thinking about Asian CS. Counter-Strike fans in Asia also love to be dripped the fuck out, and if you want to get dripped out, head to skinvault.gg, the sponsor of this channel. Skinvault.gg has been a long-term friend of the channel, and they just hit a huge milestone of 1 million skins being available on their site. This means that if you want it, Skinvault has got it. Skinvault has some of the lowest fees on the market. You can trade skins or cash out, and if you use code NEBULACS, you'll get a $10 trade bonus on the site and a 35% deposit bonus if depositing cash. If you want to trade, use SkinVault and use code NEBULACS. Back to the video. Heading into 2019, the Chinese Dream Team began to cool off, and then, when COVID hit in 2020, Asian Counter-Strike completely died. With COVID, LAN tournaments were cancelled, and with them, Asia's only opportunity to chew the fat with some of Europe's best. Playing scrims against EU at 250 ping was just not feasible, so the opportunities to scrim dried up and the scene stagnated. This was a dark, dark time for Asia. This dark cloud covered the Asian scene until the start of 2022. 2 whole years, with only 3 tournaments being attended by Asian teams over the 24-month period between February 2020 and February 2022. With things now back on land though, opportunities began to return in 2022. But with the return of the status quo, we return to the status quo of Asia being arse. At a moment when everything seemed lost, when all of the progress made over the past few years had been erased, something interesting happened in 2022. An Asian team made it through the Asian RMR that wasn't Chinese or Australian. It was a Mongolian team playing under the IHC banner, with some names that we've all come to know over the past 3 years: Techno, Blitz, and the coach, Mara. They were even able to get a series on the board, beating Renegades and going out 1-3, destroying all pick'ems and continuing the tradition of never placing Asia as the 0-3 pick. In Rio, IHC were again able to make it through the RMRs instead of the Chinese squads, solidifying themselves as one of the best teams in Asia. They were even able to take a series off 0-0 Nation, a result no one expected. IHC continued their shocking run in 2022 by getting through the Katowice play-in. This was the best performance by an Asian squad since Tyloo in 2018, and from a country that no one could have expected. Before IHC and the Mongolz, my knowledge of Mongolia was Genghis Khan, the Gobi Desert, and horses. The Mongolz literally put Mongolia on the map and introduced their country to millions of people. Heading into the Paris Major, the pressure was on for everyone. With the release of CS2 coming later in the year, the Paris Major would be the final CSGO Major, and everyone was wanting to mark their names in the Counter-Strike history books. For this last run, the promising IHC squad changed to compete under the Mongolz banner, an iconic Mongolian team founded in 2016. The Mongolz once again take the Asia RMR spots from the Chinese teams and qualify for their 3rd straight major. They take a series off Gamer Legion, the squad that would go on to play in the grand final, which in hindsight is definitely something to write home about. The Mongolz were making progress, beginning to beat higher and higher ranked teams as they went on. What do you do with a promising team breaking into the top 30 for the first time? You tear it apart, of course. But 4K and Annihilation were removed from the lineup to be replaced by 910 and Mazinho. Names we all know now, of course, but back then, this was not a popular move. But moving onwards to Cologne, all was forgiven, with the Mongolz making it through play-in all the way to the event. Things looked great, with Mazinho dropping a 1.21 rating against Furia, and 910 being a 1.17 across the event. Things were looking good. Mazinho was literally 15, the youngest to ever play at Cologne. Insane they were able to achieve anything with such a green squad on one of Counter-Strike's largest stages. And this was the Mongol's last event ever played on CSGO. But before we jump into CS2, Asian teams played one more event. 2 Chinese teams qualified for ESL Pro League Season 18, Cyclone and Lin Vision. Cyclone contained the core of Jam Young, Mercury and Mosier, and Lin Vision contained a core 4 of what it still is today: Westmelon, Zaka, Starry, and Amelia. Both squads were able to take maps off an international team, and Lin Vision even took G2 to overtime on one of the maps. As the sun set on CSGO, things were brighter than ever for Asian Counter-Strike, with 3 teams in the top 50, and they were improving quickly. Starting CS2, Tyloo picked up the Cyclone roster, bringing the iconic Chinese org back into the top 30. And the Mongolz also made one final change, dropping Hastika for Zenzu, the exciting young star rifle. But at the start of CS2, it wasn't just the teams that were exciting. With CS2 came investment. China was going to host its first international LAN in years, the CS Asia Championship 2023, and many more in 2024. The Mongolian tournament organiser Mesa will host its largest ever international LAN with a $100,000 prize pool, and even the Indians were getting in on the action, with Sky Esports hosting a $290,000 tournament in Mumbai. As a cherry on top of all of this, at the end of the CS Asia Championship, Perfect World, the publisher of Counter-Strike in China, announced that Shanghai would host the second major of the year. This would be the first major ever hosted in Asia, showing that Valve themselves are seeing insane growth and potential in the region. Finishing up 2023, the Mongolz achieved a top 4 finish at ESL Challenger Atlanta, getting wins over Complexity and putting a fight up against VP. While not the most competitive tournament, the Mongolz were starting to get more runs on the board, which for such a young team was critical. And starting in 2024, the Mongolz did not make it through the play-in for Katowice, but were able to beat Furia and of course get more runs on the board, which put them into a good position heading into the Asian RMR for Copenhagen, CS2's very first major. The Mongolz and Lin Vision were the ones to make it through the Asian RMR. This was the first time an Australian squad had not made it through the Asian RMR, and the first time that Australian team wasn't at the major since DreamHack Winter 2014. Neither the Mongolz or Lin Vision went 0-3, and the Mongolz was even able to make it through to the elimination stage, with wins against Amcal, Lin Vision, and Legacy. Here, they did end up going 0-3, but were able to get runs in against Na'Vi and Vitality, the highest caliber opponents they had ever played, which is super valuable. The Mongolz came into ESL Pro League Season 19 swinging, taking the first game against Falcons 2-1, and then they came up against G2. G2 in April 2024 was made up of Monacy, Nico, and Hunter, and were ranked 5th in the world. Mongolz came in and embarrassed the fuck out of Hooksie's boys, with G2 only taking 11 rounds across the entire series. 910 was dunking on Monacy in the head-to-heads and actually farmed Nico with an 11-1 head-to-head.
Bruh.
People were aware of the Mongolz when they first entered the scene in 2022, but after this series, people began to take notice. Unfortunately, the Mongolz were then eliminated by VP in the single elimination bracket of Pro League, but Mongolz now had more maps taken against high-ranking opponents than any other Asian team since 1.6. After Pro League, the Mongolz attended Misa Nomadic Masters Spring 2024, Mongolia's largest tournament held yet. They'd almost outgrown tournaments like this, being ranked number 15th in the world, and the second highest ranked team being at the event was Aurora at 28th. So, they easily dominated and collected their first piece of serious silverware for their cabinet. But, despite the $100,000 prize pool, there wasn't much else about this tournament that was prestigious. They wanted more. And that opportunity came quickly with Yalla Compass 2024, the $400,000 tournament. Getting an invite, this was one of the Mongolz' first times being highly ranked enough that they received an invite and didn't need to qualify. After topping their group, confidently beating Heroic, Ents, Nip, and Sashi, the Mongolz were straight through to the semis. And getting past Astralis in the semi-finals placed Mongolz in the grand final. 2 tournaments in a row. They came up against Nip in the final. And Nip was honestly a surprise to see here in the grand final, being the lowest ranked team attending the entire tournament at 43rd, enabled by multiple life games by Wrinkle. This win broke the Asian CS drought of Tier 1 events. 14 years. It has been 14 years since an Asian team has won a Tier 1 event. And 910 took the MVP, the first Mongolian to ever get a HLTV MVP medal. I love you, Ice Age baby. Over the remainder of 2024, there were no more grand finals for any Asian teams. But thanks to the Mongolz' efforts, Asia had 3 slots for the upcoming Shanghai Major, more than the region had ever had. Rare Atom, the Mongolz, and FlyQuests were the teams to make it through the Asian RMR. The Mongolz then proceeded to go 3-0 in the opening stage, winning cleanly against Rare Atom, MIBR, and Gamer Legion. They only lost 15 rounds across the 4 maps that they played, qualifying for the final stage of the major in convincing fashion. The Mongolz, as the final Asian team left in the first Asian major, then went on to shock the Counter-Strike scene more than they ever had before. They went 3-0 in the groups of the final stage, qualifying for the major playoffs, the largest stage in Counter-Strike. They beat the number 2 ranked G2, the number 5 ranked Mouse, and the number 8 ranked Heroic. This was a far more legit run than the other 3-0 team, Vitality. and this was the first time since the launch of CSGO that an Asian team had made the playoffs of a major.
Of CS2, we write the first page of a new book. Asian Counter-Strike for the first time in major playoffs.
But here in the quarters, the pressure of the largest stage in Counter-Strike clearly had an impact on the previously untouchable team. They went down 0-2, and with that, Asia's best year in years came to an end. More runs have been put on the board for Asian teams against the best of the best than ever before, increasing their skill ceilings and increasing confidence in front of crowds. And things were only just getting started for our friends in the East. Mongolz wrapped up 2024 being ranked 7th globally, and there were 4 other Asian squads in the top 50. Atox, another Mongolian squad, and the 3 Chinese teams with promise, Rare Atom, Tyloo, and Lin Vision. Heading into 2025, with the start of VRS, ranking meant even more than in the past. But with Mongolz being ranked so highly and getting a default invite, when events had an Asian invite slot, that would be open to another team, further expanding the reach of Asian CS. The first large LAN in 2025 we saw an Asian side was Katowice, and the Mongolz qualified right through, not needing to play the play-in. Their first games of the year were against Liquid, taking it 2-1, and Gamer Legion, taking it 2-0. But after losing to Na'Vi, it placed Mongolz in the quarterfinals. Coming up against Eternal Fire, the Turkish squad who was on a similar upwards trajectory to the Mongolz, they were able to get a relatively comfortable 2-0 and into Asia's first S-tier semi-finals, up against Vitality, the team that would dominate the remainder of the season. They got destroyed 2-0, but gained more on-stage experience. Every game, played on a big stage, was increasing confidence, and each event there was more and more experience for the young team. Moving immediately onto the next event, Cluj-Napoca, the Mongolz again made the playoffs 3-0, but getting upset by Astralis sent them home. Despite the disappointment on stage, reaching the playoffs again proved that the Mongolz were now a mainstay in the playoffs of Counter-Strike's biggest tournaments. And the Chinese teams finally rejoin our story at Pro League, with both Lin Vision and Tyloo getting more opportunity to get runs against some of Counter-Strike's best. Tyloo even managed to get through to the main event, taking a series off 3D Max ranked 16th, Eternal Fire ranked 4th, and FlyQuest ranked 24th. We now had 2 Asian teams in the main stage of an S-tier event, Tyloo and Mongolz, both continuing to get work with Counter-Strike's best. Tyloo even managed to play Spirit and Na'Vi, the highest ranked teams they had ever played, and they even managed to take a map off of Na'Vi. The Mongolz, of course, qualified to playoffs, and again, after taking Na'Vi's head in quarters, made it to the semi-finals. But again, they were eliminated in the semis. The Mongolz then went on a streak of reaching the playoffs of every single event they attended leading up to the major, with Rare Atom, Lin Vision, and even the Huns also qualifying for large events. And coming into the jewel of the season, the major in Austin, Asia had never looked better, and had clearly not pressed on the brakes from the progress in 2024. With the Mongolz heading straight through to Stage 3, and with 32 teams at the major compared to the original 24, more Asian teams were at Austin than any major in history. 2 Mongolian squads, and 2 Chinese squads. With Tyloo taking wins against Metzisport, Complexity and FlyQuest, they managed to qualify through to Stage 2. And Lin Vision, with wins against Legacy, Chinggis Warriors and NRG, also were able to get through to Stage 2. Unfortunately, Chinggis Warriors was not able to make it, but with a win against Fluxo, they were able to not go 0-3. 3 Asian teams were in the top 24 of the major, and with some great personalities to boot. The Austin Major was the first introduction to players like G from Tyloo and Amelia from Lin Vision for many fans.
Thank you.
What are you feeling?
Good.
Personality is something that's missing from a lot of breakout characters at the upper echelon of Counter-Strike. G and Amelia having such personalities immediately made them fan favourites. Underdogs, talented, and upward trajectory with a personality to boot. Tyloo and Lin Vision quickly became teams people wanted in the final stage of the major. The dream started strong, with Tyloo taking their first game against M80 quite comfortably, but unfortunately, they proceeded to lose their following 3 games, going out 3-1. And Lin Vision did not start as well as Tyloo, being matched against Furia for their first game and they got slaughtered. And with the group favourites Falcons also losing their first game, Lin Vision was unlucky enough to be matched up with the number 4 ranked team for their second game. It was over. Or was it?
Finish this. I'm about to end this man's whole career.
Done.
What career? But I'm not a rapper. What career? Look.
You got a point right here. It is.
Boom. Bam. Bop. Bada bop. Boom. Pow.
Lin Vision took the map 13-9 and sent Falcons down to 0-2. Insane. Lin Vision, for their 1-1 game, cannibalised their countrymen Tyloo and went on to 2-1. After losing to Pain, they went to 2-2, the last chance for Lin Vision to make the final stage of the major. They come up against Bait, a team who had wins against Falcons and Heroics so far. But Starry too strong. They managed to get past, and Amelia Q gets on the table. 2 Asian teams in the top 16 of a major. This 12 months has been the greatest in Asian Counter-Strike history. Lin Vision killed everyone's pick'ems again in the first round, beating Liquid, but then proceeded to go out 3-1. They played Spirit, Mongolz, and Legacy, all quality teams, so while losing, playing these games at all develops the region. And Mongolz was able to sneak through into the playoffs, going 3-2, with wins against Liquid, Lin Vision, and G2, matching their achievements from the Shanghai Major. In the quarterfinals, on the major stage, the Mongolz experienced something they never had before. The crowd was against them. Coming up against FaZe, with Elige, America's sweetheart, and Simple, the GOAT of Counter-Strike, it's easy to see why the crowd wanted FaZe to win. But we all know how that went. 9-10 dunks on Simple, and Simple's best highlight is him missing 2 no-scopes at top mid in Mirage. So, reaching the semi-finals. This is a new record for Asian CS. The Mongolz continue to show that they are my GOATs for a reason. Up against Pain, this shit was too easy, dominating both maps. The Mongolz were in the grand final of the major. Let me repeat, the Mongolz are in the grand final of a fucking major. And against Vitality, the team that had the perfect season, winning everything they entered, and the main reason Mongolz didn't get any silverware the first season of 2025. The veto went as well as the Mongolz could have hoped, getting Mirage and Dust 2 as the first 2 maps. They started strong, taking Mirage 13-5 and putting Vitality on notice. They haven't just made the grand final for it to be a boring affair like so many majors in the past. The Mongolz deserve to be here and are putting up a fight. Or at least we thought it would be competitive. Vitality finished off their perfect season and reverse sweeped the Mongolz. But the Mongolz won the Aura battle, and sources state that 4% of the entire population of Mongolia was watching the grand final. That is an insane stat. 4% of your entire country is watching you play Counter-Strike. And it wasn't just Mongolia behind the Mongolz. Pretty much every single fan of Counter-Strike was manifesting the downfall of Vitality, but it may have had the opposite effect and powered Apex and the squad up. So, while not taking the biggest trophy in Counter-Strike, the Mongolz made history. The end of the season finished up with 3 teams from Asia in the top 20 in VRS. This is compared to 2 from the Americas, Furia and Pain, and there are no NA teams in the top 20. Asia is now no longer the worst region. We're not even the second worst region. We are the second best region on Earth, and comfortably so. Best of all, the major in Austin isn't even the end of this story. The first tournament back from summer break, Fisher Playground, was a 1 million tournament in Serbia. The tournament saw 3 Chinese teams attend: Tyloo, Lin Vision, and Rare Atom. Starting in group play, both Tyloo and Lin Vision made it out of the groups, cleaning up against Astralis and 3D Max respectively. In quarters, Tyloo managed to get past 3D Max, and with the whole squad stepping up. Unfortunately, Lin Vision were unable to get past Astralis, but Tyloo would continue to carry the Chinese flag onward. And after insane performances from Jamyang and G, Tyloo scrape past Saw and make their way to China's first grand final in Counter-Strike 2. Best of 5 against an Astralis that's finally showing promise for the first time in 4 years. China #1 though, baby. Tyloo take it 3-1, and Jamyang becomes the first ever Chinese player to take a HLTV MVP medal in Counter-Strike history. And here we are in the present. In the last 12 months, 2 Asian teams have acquired new silverware, and with the Mongolz solidly being in the top 4, more silverware is definitely in their future. And with the upwards trajectory of Tyloo, there's probably some more trophies in their future too. As the saying goes, a rising tide raises all ships, and with the Mongolz' incredible rise, they've pulled the rest of the region up, kicking and screaming. With the increased level, there's better scrim opportunities, there's more eyes on the scene, and there's more money. This is a positive feedback loop. This train has no brakes, and Asian CS has only just begun. More silverware is surely imminent. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Like and subscribe as well. And use code NebulaCS on all sites.